Hi guys, welcome back. What if I told you that the hardest tissue in your body, the calcium and mineral structure holding your entire skeleton together, is also a functioning hormone-producing endocrine organ that is actively regulating your brain, your memory, your muscle performance, your metabolism, and potentially your mood every single day? Your bones are not inert scaffolding, they are talking to your organs. And the science of how they do it is one of the most surprising discoveries in biology of the last 2 decades. In the next few minutes, you are going to discover the specific hormone your bone cells produce that crosses the blood-brain barrier and directly influences memory and cognitive function. The April 2026 review in PMC confirming osteocalcin as a multifunctional hormone acting across metabolism, neurobiology, and chronic disease. The January 2026 study documenting the bone-brain axis as a bidirectional communication network linked to depression and osteoporosis simultaneously, why exercise makes your bones produce more of these hormones and what that means for brain health, and what the current research says about osteocalcin as a potential future biomarker and therapeutic target. Let's get into it. For most of medical history, the skeleton was understood through one lens: structure. Bones support your body, they protect your organs, they store calcium and minerals, they are the framework everything else hangs on. That understanding was not wrong, but it was profoundly incomplete. The first hint that something more was happening came from research on a protein produced by osteoblasts, the cells responsible for building new bone tissue. This protein was called osteocalcin. For decades, it was studied almost exclusively as a marker of bone formation, a protein that helped regulate how calcium was deposited into bone matrix. Then researchers began noticing that osteocalcin was showing up in places it had no obvious reason to be: in the brain, in the pancreas, in muscle tissue, in the liver, in fat cells. And it wasn't just present in these places, it appeared to be doing something there. The investigation that followed produced findings that genuinely reshuffled our understanding of what the skeleton is. Here is what almost nobody outside of endocrinology research knows about what osteocalcin actually does. A review published in PMC in April 2026, covering osteocalcin biology across metabolism, neurobiology, and chronic disease, confirmed that osteocalcin is now recognized as a multifunctional hormone now with its bioactive form called undercarboxylated osteocalcin, linking skeletal remodeling to systemic physiological processes that have nothing to do with bone itself. Osteocalcin travels through the bloodstream, it crosses the blood-brain barrier, and once inside the brain, research has documented that it promotes the synthesis of several neurotransmitters, including dopamine, serotonin, and GABA, and stimulates the expression of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, the protein we have discussed previously as one of the most important drivers of hippocampal neurogenesis and cognitive resilience. A 2025 review published in Frontiers in Cell and Developmental Biology specifically examined the osteocalcin GPR158 receptor pathway in the brain. GPR158 is a receptor expressed in brain regions involved in cognition and mood, and osteocalcin binds to it directly. The downstream effects of this binding include activation of signaling pathways that support synaptic plasticity, the brain's capacity to strengthen and form new neural connections that underlie learning and memory. But here's where most people get this completely wrong when they hear about bone hormones. Most people assume this is obscure, fringe biology, interesting in a laboratory but irrelevant to daily life. The January 2026 paper published in the journal Biomolecules tells a different story. The researchers examined the bone-brain axis, the bidirectional communication network connecting the skeletal and central nervous systems, specifically in the context of depression and osteoporosis. Their finding: depression and osteoporosis co-occur with striking frequency, particularly in older adults. And the bone-brain axis appears to be a central mechanism explaining why. This is not just a statistical association. The researchers identified 3 specific molecular mechanisms through which bone tissue participates in depression pathophysiology. First, through the secretion of osteokines, particularly osteocalcin, which modulates neurotransmitter systems in the brain. Second, through extracellular vesicle signaling between bone and brain. And third, through shared inflammatory pathways affecting both bone density and mood regulation simultaneously. The bidirectional nature of this axis is critical. Depression doesn't just follow bone loss. Bone health affects brain chemistry, and brain chemistry affects bone health. Two conditions previously treated as completely separate, a skeletal disease and a psychiatric condition, are now understood to be connected through a dedicated molecular communication system running between the skeleton and the central nervous system. Now here's the discovery that changes everything about how you should think about exercise and brain health. We have discussed in previous videos how aerobic exercise increases BDNF and promotes hippocampal neurogenesis. We have discussed how it improves dopamine signaling and reduces neuroinflammation. The question researchers have been asking is, through what specific mechanisms does exercise produce these brain benefits? One of the answers is now understood to involve bone. When your skeleton is mechanically loaded, when you exercise, particularly through resistance training and impact activities, osteoblasts, the bone-building cells, respond to that mechanical stress by increasing their activity. And increased osteoblast activity means increased osteocalcin production and secretion. Research published in Bone in 2025, examining exercise-induced interactions between skeletal muscle and bone, confirmed that exercise drives production of both osteocalcin from bone and irisin from muscle, and that these two hormones interact, each amplifying the other's effects on downstream targets. Exercise does not just build stronger bones, it turns your bones into more active hormone-producing organs, and those hormones travel to your brain, promote neurotransmitter synthesis, stimulate BDNF, and support the synaptic plasticity that underlies cognitive function. This means that part of why resistance training and impact exercise are so beneficial for brain health is being mediated by your skeleton acting as an endocrine organ. The exercise bone-brain connection is now a documented biological pathway, not just a general association. But osteocalcin is not the only hormone your bones produce, and this is where the picture becomes even more remarkable. The skeleton produces a family of signaling molecules now called osteokines, biologically active molecules secreted by bone tissue with endocrine functions reaching well beyond the skeleton itself. Lipocaline 2 is one of these. It is produced by osteoblasts and has been shown to act in the hypothalamus, influencing appetite regulation and stress responses. Sclerostin is predominantly produced by osteocytes, the most abundant cell type in mature bone, and has been studied at Harvard Medical School and the Broad Institute of MIT as a paracrine and endocrine regulator with effects reaching adipose tissue, energy homeostasis, and mineral metabolism in the kidney. Research reviewed by Harvard endocrinologists describes the skeleton as an endocrine organ that controls mineral metabolism and energy homeostasis through these secreted factors. FGF23R, fibroblast growth factor 23R, is produced by osteocytes and regulates phosphate and vitamin D metabolism throughout the body, with direct effects on kidney function and cardiovascular health. The discovery that bones produce this range of signaling molecules, each acting on different organ systems, each responding to different biological inputs, including exercise, diet, and hormonal environment, has fundamentally repositioned the skeleton in how endocrinologists and neuroscientists understand whole body physiology. Let's talk about what this means for cognitive aging specifically, because this is where the clinical implications are most significant. Multiple studies have found that circulating osteocalcin levels decline with age. As bone density decreases and osteoblast activity slows in older adults, osteocalcin production drops correspondingly, and lower osteocalcin levels in aging populations have been associated in longitudinal research with worse cognitive performance and greater risk of cognitive decline. Researchers at Columbia University and elsewhere have proposed and are actively investigating whether maintaining or restoring osteocalcin levels in aging could represent a therapeutic strategy for cognitive preservation. Animal studies have shown that administering osteocalcin to aged mice restored their memory and cognitive performance to levels comparable to younger animals. The human translation of these findings remains a priority area for ongoing research. The April 2026 PMC review identified osteocalcin as increasingly recognized as both a potential biomarker for cognitive impairment risk and a potential therapeutic target, noting that the evidence base supporting its endocrine functions across metabolism, neurobiology, and aging has now reached the level of translational clinical relevance. So, what does all of this mean practically? The most evidence-supported intervention for maintaining healthy osteocalcin production is the same intervention that maintains bone health generally, and the same intervention that produces brain benefits through multiple other pathways we have already discussed. Physical exercise, particularly resistance training and weight-bearing activity, is the strongest documented driver of osteoblast activity and therefore osteocalcin production. The research on exercise-induced osteocalcin elevation is consistent and significant. This is another reason, beyond muscle, cardiovascular health, and direct neurological effects, why resistance training specifically is so protective for brain function as we age. Vitamin K2 plays a critical and often underappreciated role in this system. Osteocalcin's bioactive form, the undercarboxylated osteocalcin, requires vitamin K2 for proper carboxylation and function. Vitamin K2 deficiency impairs osteocalcin activation. Foods naturally rich in vitamin K2, fermented foods, certain cheeses, egg yolks, and some meats, support this system. This is one of the more specific and less commonly discussed nutritional interventions with documented relevance to both bone and brain health through the osteocalcin pathway. Calcium and vitamin D remain foundational for osteoblast function and therefore osteocalcin production. Their role in bone health is well established, and their indirect role in supporting the skeletal endocrine system follows directly from this. And sleep, as always, appears as a regulator here too. Growth hormone, which peaks during deep sleep, directly stimulates osteoblast activity. Protecting sleep quality protects the activity of the cells responsible for producing osteocalcin. Let me bring everything together. Your bones are not inert mineral scaffolding. They are a functioning endocrine organ producing at least 4 documented osteokines: osteocalcin, lipocalin-2, sclerostin, and FGF23, each with systemic effects reaching the brain, the pancreas, the liver, the kidneys, and adipose tissue. Osteocalcin specifically crosses the blood-brain barrier, binds to receptors in brain regions involved in cognition and mood, promotes the synthesis of dopamine, serotonin, and GABA, and stimulates BDNF production. Its levels decline with age, its levels rise with exercise. And the January 2026 research connecting the bone-brain axis to the co-occurrence of depression and osteoporosis confirms that skeletal health and brain health are not separate concerns. They are connected through dedicated bidirectional molecular communication. The real question was never just, how do I keep my bones strong? The real question is, are you treating your skeleton as the hormone-producing, brain-communicating endocrine organ that the latest science has confirmed it to be? If this completely changed how you think about your own skeleton, subscribe ZE, because next week we go even deeper into the hidden biology connecting the body systems you thought you understood. See you in the next one.